Hi, my name's Stephania. I'm from the Washington Ethical Society, and I'm here with Karen. And we're here to talk to you about an assessment that we did at Wes to see if what the culture was at Wes. And it was called the Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression, Multiculturalism Audit/Assessment. So we call it AROMAC. And so the question was, to what degree is Wes anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural institution? So that was the question we're still in the process of finding. So I'm going to talk about the audit, and Karen's going to talk about the assessment. So how did we start to accomplish this audit? So we broke out into two groups. We made sure that there was multiple genders, sexual orientations, races, ethnicities, to have a really full picture and get a very diverse group of voices in the room. And so we started by interviewing staff and stakeholders. We reviewed Wes's history. We examined the processes and how they looked in the regular business and how they're conducted. And so we broke it down into focus areas. We had 6 focus areas. The first one was governance documents, employment, communication and media, building and equipment, our events and commitments, and our platforms. So we broke our teams down to go through all of these documents and procedures and see how Wes was anti-racist or anti-oppression. So I'm just going to go through the highlights of what we found. So with the governance documents, we had words like inclusion and diversity, but no further definitions on what that looked like. So, you know, what does it mean to be inclusive? How does it show up, and what does it look like? That was one of the main things that popped out. And also that what is entrenched in our history. So addressing head-on how entrenched system of privilege affect the way we make decisions, form views, and carry out the mission at Wes. And that's really important because we can talk about making change, but if it's written that 80% of your congregation makes the decisions and 80% of the congregation is just white people, then you're systemically, you're marginalizing voices. So that was really important. We also looked at employment. We wanted to require AROMAC training for all staff and even volunteers so that anybody that is engaged with working in or around the community is gotten some cultural competency, not just on race, but also LGBTQ issues, understanding pronouns, and understanding all systems of oppression. And into our communication and media, we wanted to focus on representation, but not in a way that felt unauthentic. So picking, even just as far as Facebook posts, what kind of representation do we see in Facebook posts? Or when people come into the congregation, what kind of artwork are they seeing? Are they seeing people of color? Are they seeing different types of things? And really making sure that that is authentic and not token. Another thing we really wanted to focus on too, because it wasn't just racism that we were looking at, it was all oppressions. So how do we accommodate to people with different abilities? Do we have ramps getting up to, like you guys have a platform that's a ramp, that's great. We identified areas at West where we could be better for people with different abilities and learning how to communicate better. Hearing aids, all these small things that we do have at West that we need to make sure that can a deaf person come to our service? Do we have accommodations for that? Do we have automatic doors for people that can't open doors or are in wheelchairs? All of those things we looked at. Do we have carpooling? Do we have any way that we could have a bus or some sort of service go out to pick people up to bring people into our community? And then one of the biggest things that we got to with events/commitments was money. How many events do we have that cost money, that we require money for lunches, our annual camping trip, we have a mission work that we do, and going away from the anti-racism into anti-oppression, you know, we have the intersections of how oppression shows up, how it shows up. So classism, racism, you know, sexism, how all these things intermingle. And so that was one of the biggest things we got to, is like we have fundraising activities that we need to do to raise funds, but are we making sure that people are aware that they can come, they're free to come if they don't have the funds to attend our events? So we finished our assessment, we wrote up a document, I think it's under review, our report is under review right now, and now we're moving into the assessment part of our audit.
So as Stephania mentioned, we had these sort of two strands, and so one was really looking at the institutional systems, and then the other, the assessment was really trying to address the attitudes and opinions and kind of readiness of our congregation to be deeply involved in this ARAMAC work. And so what we did is last summer, we launched a survey and to get a snapshot of these attitudes. And we weren't looking to get results that would let us pat ourselves in the back. We really wanted to ask challenging questions that required people to engage actively with what they really thought and how they acted, and use it to find those places where WES needs to grow and to continue to learn and to be more active. So we asked about attitudes about doing anti-racism work and anti-oppression work. We probed whether folks had experienced or observed oppressions at WES. And we also solicited commentary on a whole range of topics, including ableism, ageism, classism, gender, sexual identity, and transphobia, racism, sexism, and xenophobia. And we also queried how eager and active folks would be to both implement and embrace change. And so that was the totality of what we were looking at, which meant that the survey was really long. And we knew that that was a risk, but we also figured we weren't going to get likely to get another crack at asking, a congregational survey of this type for a while, and so we decided we would go long. And so, of course, we got feedback. So we had about 30% of the members actually did the survey, which we thought was a pretty good response rate. About 25% of the people actually got all the way to the end of the survey. We had some people got a little tired and gave up along the way. And then we had, of course, there were about 10 folks who contacted us directly with critiques about the survey, which is also a pretty good response rate, we thought. And the upshot of that was, I think, like a combination of it didn't let me say what I wanted to say, and we were like, yeah, we did allow comments, but point taken. But I think also that it reflected some discomfort with the topics. But what we did discover were like really great things. A lot of people really thanked us for, because in part it was long, that they had to really sit and think about the issues. They couldn't just snap off their answers. So we are in the process of analyzing that work in detail, but what we did a quick review that showed us, what were the most significant things. Either places where there was a lot of agreement, and so we felt good, and that told us things what was next. But also where things were very confusing because it was all over the place. And we are now doing listening campaign. We had our first one last week, we have another one tomorrow, and then 2 to come. And the main topics that we're looking at, and I'll just rattle them off to you before this explodes beside me, were what is the culture of WES? And so what is core to who we are? And what might we change? And how willing are we to make those changes? So we've talked about that some. Tomorrow we're going to be really digging into defining terms, so making sure we have a shared language so that we can have constructive conversations. And then we're going to be looking at how to build effective partnerships and anti-oppressive work. And finally, really helping people to identify what has helped them grow in the past and how as a congregation we can help each other continue to grow into the future. And then we're going to put all of that information together that will continue to help us shape our ARAMAC work in the years to come. So that's what we're up to.